Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Megan King. I'm the Programs and Outreach Planner for Preservation Austin, and I'm so delighted to be with you all tonight for our virtual program, The Legacy of John S. Chase in East Austin, generously supported by our public program sponsor, Colin Corrigan. A quick note of housekeeping, Zoom allows you to select different speaker views, so if you'd like, you can toggle in the top right corner of your screen for your desired view. After tonight's presentation, we will be hosting a Q&A session with our speakers, so please enter any of the questions that you have throughout the program in the chat box down below. We will also be recording this presentation to share on our social media channels, so please be sure to follow us there to stay up to date. We are at Preservation Austin on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. I'd like to start off by welcoming our Preservation Austin members in attendance tonight. Thank you for supporting the work that we do to empower Austinites to shape a more inclusive, resilient, and meaningful community culture through preservation. If you're not yet a member, I highly encourage you to join. Our annual membership drive is coming up this month from August 16th to 31st, but if you don't have to wait until then to join. To learn more about membership, visit preservationaustin.org. And while you're there, you can check out the host of amazing programs and initiatives our organization has going on right now. At the moment, our call for nominations for our 2021 Preservation Merit Awards are currently open. Established in 1960, this program honors visionary approaches to preserving our city's unique architectural, cultural, and environmental heritage. By recognizing outstanding individuals, businesses, organizations, and institutions, we hope to inspire others to carry on in this important work. The nomination period for this year's awards closes on September 1st. So if you have a project that you think would be a worthy candidate, visit preservationaustin.org to submit a nomination before the deadline. And now we'll go on with tonight's program. Architect John S. Chase's storied career as a groundbreaking figure in architecture garnered him national and international acclaim. Among the first African-American students admitted to the University of Texas. Some people muting. Sorry. Among the first African-American students admitted to the University of Texas at Austin, Austin became Chase's laboratory where he tested out early iterations of his visionary approach to modernism. Though his time in Austin was brief before he established his firm in Houston, Chase produced some of the city's most significant works of architecture, including the newly restored 1952 Teachers State Association of Texas headquarters, located at 1191 Navasota Street. That will be the focus of much of tonight's program. First, we will hear from Dr. Tara Dudley, biographer of John S. Chase, on Chase's Austin's beginnings and his architectural legacy. Dr. Dudley is a historic preservation consultant and lecturer at the University of Texas at Austin. Her research examines the contributions of African-American builders and architects to the American built environment, focusing on the antebellum and Reconstruction eras in Austin and Texas, as well as the architectural activities of New Orleans' Gens de Couleur, Free People of Color in French. She is the author of Building Antebellum New Orleans, Free People of Color and Their Influence, and of the forthcoming biography, There's Something More to Be Done, The Life and Work of John Saunders Chase. Her current research explores the contributions of African Americans to Austin's built environment from the antebellum era onward. Dr. Dudley obtained her doctorate in architectural history and master's degree in historic preservation from UT Austin and holds a bachelor's degree in art history from Princeton University. Following Dr. Dudley, we will hear from Dr. Suchitra Gururaj and Stephanie L. Lang of the University of Texas at Austin Division of Diversity and Community Engagement, who will soon call the Chase Building at Navasota Street home. Purchased by the University in 2018, they will discuss the building's long history as a community asset within East Austin and its future use as the DDCE's Center for Community Engagement, followed by an exclusive preview of the building, which has been newly restored and renovated by Carter Design Associates. Suchitra Gururaj, PhD, serves as Assistant Vice President for Community and Economic Engagement at the DDCE, where she's the visionary and strategic lead for the student engagement programs rooted in service, community-based learning course offerings, public engagement programming, and in-kind sponsorship. She also serves as Clinical Assistant Professor in the College of Liberal Arts. Her research focuses on service learning outcomes, university community partnerships, and social inclusion policies in higher education. Dr. Gururaj earned a BA in English Literature from Yale University, an MA in English from the University of Chicago, and a PhD in Educational Administration from the University of Texas at Austin. She serves as book review editor for the Michigan Journal of Community Service Learning, acts as board chair for the Community Advancement Network of Austin, and holds a seat on the Commission on Economic and Community Engagement for the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities. Stephanie L. Lang is a writer and community curator who uses the power of storytelling to explore concepts of home and resistance. Currently, Ms. Lang is the Director of Equity and Community Advocacy at the University of Texas at Austin's Center for Community Engagement in the Office of the Vice President of the DDCE. She is also a founding member of the Travis County African American Heritage Council, a member of the Travis County Historical Commission, and host of Zoombie, a monthly radio show on KAZI 88.7 that amplifies the work of scholars, artists, and community organizations doing work centered around Black people in Austin. And following our speakers, we will screen our exclusive virtual tour of the newly restored John S. Chase building with Amory Krueger, Director of Student Engagement Programs with the Center for Community Engagement. Amory will also be on the call and available to answer any questions during the Q&A. I'll also ask anybody to mute. I don't know what the setting happened there, but for some reason, not everybody's muted. So if you could please mute during the presentations, that'd be greatly appreciated. And with that, thank you so much to our incredible speakers. And I will now turn it over to Dr. Dudley.
Great, thanks everyone for joining us this evening. I'm just gonna get shared. Hope you all can see my screen. If I could get a quick thumbs up. It's changed on my end, so I think we're good. All right, well, tonight I just wanted to do a quick overview of John Chase's beginnings and career here in Austin, which is definitely a less focused on aspect of his career, but it's really important, and it's nice to have our own sort of hometown hero in that sense, particularly with all of the attention his work is getting of late, and of course with today's program, the wonderful renovation of the DDCE building, or the building that the DDCE will occupy. And so I'll just do about a 10-15 minutes overview. And of course, if you have any questions afterwards, I'm happy to talk about John Chase in much more detail. But John Saunders Chase was born in Annapolis, Maryland on January 23rd, 1925. His father, also John Saunders Chase, was educated at Morgan College, an institution of higher learning for African Americans in Baltimore, Maryland. His mother was Viola, and like her parents, was also college educated. John and Viola Chase married around 1921. And although his parents later separated, Saunders, as our John S. Chase was called in his childhood, along with his older sister Laura, grew up in a multi-generational family that included their mother Viola, their grandmother Laura, their aunt Ethel, and their uncle Ulysses. Chase's upbringing in Annapolis's Black community, its role models and community leaders would have a lasting impact on him personally, professionally, and throughout his career as he traveled on to Hampton Institute, where he studied architectural engineering and as an undergraduate, and then eventually onward to East Austin and Houston's Third Ward, of course, where he really came into his own and established his career as a preeminent international architect. But today, his sojourn in Austin is our focus, and many are not aware that even before his historic desegregation of the University of Texas at Austin in the School of Architecture, John Saunders Chase had made himself personally and professionally home in East Austin's Black community. But Austin was not his first choice. After graduating from Hampton in 1948, he initially preferred not to work in the US South and was placed in an architectural firm in Philadelphia. He soon realized, however, that the rapidly developing Deep South, as he put it, might offer other opportunities and better opportunities for him to pursue a career in architecture. So he actually wrote back to the placement program at Hampton Institute asking for a position in the Deep South, and he underlined it in his request letter. And he was offered then a position to teach drafting at the Crescent Institute in Austin, Texas. John S. Chase recalled his arrival in Austin in the late summer of 1948. Quote, "We got off the train right down there off of Congress. I've never been that hot in my life. And I really thought that it was the heat from the engines as I walked along the platform to go into the outside. And lo and behold, when I got outside, it was just as hot. I said, well, this is it, end quote. And this was it indeed. He arrived in Austin to teach at the Crescent Institute, an educational institution that was founded in 1931 by Urissa V. Christian, and it was a trade school initially for veterans, for GIs. By the late 1940s, the school was owned and operated by Maxine and Russell Lombard. In 1947, the school consisted of the Crescent Beauty Culture Institute at 1104 East 9th, the Beauty School Laboratory at 1009 Wheeler Street, and the cafeteria at 1205 East 11th. Thanks in large part to the presence of John Chase, who taught at and constructed buildings for the Crescent Institute for 2.5 or 3 years, the Crescent Institute also provided private instruction for African American veterans in drafting. He also provided instruction in other building arts, or the school provided those services thanks to Chase, according to the 1949 city directory. Here we're looking at a Sanborn map of the locations of the Crescent Institute. So we see an office, which was located in the building on 9th Street here. It housed the classes for personal instruction in drafting, electric motor and appliance repair, for cabinet work, business administration, and beauty culture. And then the Beauty Culture and Business Administration School and Office was located at the East 11th Street address pictured here. So these were the locations of these two buildings. The remodel of the building on East 9th Street was probably one of Chase's first major projects in Austin. He partnered with Herbert Buckley, who was a native of Laurel, Mississippi, that had attended Tuskegee Institute and also studied building trades and architecture. And in addition to having interest in both pursuing architectural careers, both Chase and Buckley were World War II veterans and members of the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. So they had a lot in common and actually partnered together here in Austin in the late 1940s. In this slide, we have a photograph of Chase and Buckley, and I'm pretty certain that this is there on site at the Crescent Institute as they were working on this building in about 1949. And so here we have a 1949 photograph of the Crescent Institute. This is from the Chase family collection. And then you can see here juxtaposed with this building or image of a detail of a Sanborn map from 1962 suggests the outcome of some of the projects that Chase and Buckley might have done on this building. So here we see a building that looks relatively much like a two-story family home. And they transformed that building really to serve as an educational institution with the requisite office spaces and classrooms and so on and so forth that the Crescent Institute would have needed. Unfortunately, none of the buildings that were part of the Crescent Institute survive today. Another building that is no longer extant that was very important to Chase's early career here in Austin is this building here. And this was the Deluxe Hotel, established by Luling native James Reed after World War II. And this was Austin's first hotel for African Americans. The Deluxe Hotel really was an anchor among other businesses in Austin, other restaurants, shops, nightclubs in what was known as Austin's Black commercial district on East 11th Street, along with East 12th Street at that time period. And so there were notables such as Louis Armstrong, who lodged at the Deluxe on their visit to Austin. And so this building started out as a single family home as well. And over time, Reed added on to that structure. And one of the individuals who really contributed to that was John S. Chase. It started out as a single family home, probably a tourist home where African Americans who were traveling through the area could lodge because they couldn't stay at hotels during the Jim Crow era. And I was really excited to first encounter this particular building when I was doing research on the Green Books. And so it was really, really exciting for me even to learn about the contributions of John Chase and Herbert Buckley to the development of this particular building. And so we know that by June of 1949, Reed had hired Chase and Buckley. There's an advertisement in the Austin American Statesman dated June 27th, 1949, where they're looking for bids for the construction of a two-story frame addition to what was essentially a single family home. And you can kind of see the core of that in this photograph here, and this detail of a Sanborn map of the much more simple building that was there on that site. And it was really with this project that Chase also started to learn how to become a professional architect. He said that he didn't really know how to charge for projects. He didn't know anything about bidding or things of that nature. And he actually worked for Reed for this project for 3 meals a day, because of course he was a young bachelor living in Austin. And so there was a sweet deal where he had some place to stay and food to eat during this time period. A little bit later on, we decided to further expand the building in October of 1950. And there was an announcement in the Statesman again saying that he'd been granted a permit to add 2 one-story masonry buildings. And so you can see these buildings here. And I'm fairly certain that Chase and Buckley, if not Chase himself, contributed to those additions as well to this particular building. And so here we're looking at the Deluxe Hotel after these 2 early additions from a photograph in 1951. And so these 3 projects, or three sites, the 2 from the Crescent Institute and here the Deluxe Hotel, really formed a foundation for Chase's architectural career, his building career here in Austin. But he was also forming foundations of another sort here in Austin as well, because it's here, of course, that he met, courted, and married native Austinite Drusy Ray Rucker, who he had met in September 1948, so not long after he had arrived in Austin, where he was asked to stand in with some other guys that he was boarding with at a place that Maxine Lombard of the Crescent Institute owned. And so there was some kind of accident, and the groomsmen who were traveling from out of state wouldn't make it. Maxine Lombard was friends with Drusy's cousin's mom, and she went over to the boarding house to look for groomsmen. And the rest, as they say, is history. John Chase had to do a little bit of convincing. Drusy was a little bit younger than him and was still a student at Houston, or at Tillotson Institute, today's Houston Tillotson University. And after she finally said yes and agreed to go out with him on a date, he bonded with her father over baseball, and the rest is history. The 2 married on August 12, 1950, and Chase had been living in a boarding house on Juniper Street, but the newlyweds purchased a home at 2305 East 22nd Street. And you can see that address here. And I love this aerial, especially with the recent designation of the Rogers Washington Holy Cross neighborhood as a district here in Austin, and the really wonderful program that Preservation Austin did. In my preparing for that and looking at these aerials, I realized that Drusy and John lived here at this house about here. It's no longer extant, but that was well before the neighborhood was even established. And you can see this blank area, this grassy field where that neighborhood would develop just a few sweet years later. And so we see really a development or a relationship with this area that John had even before this time. And so this is also all before he is matriculating and desegregating and playing that very important role in history at the University of Texas. And I think we're all familiar with these images here of different photographs, different shots that were taken when he was registering. Of course, after the Sweat versus Painter case went down, it was only a couple of weeks before the summer semester. And so John immediately went to the university to register to enroll in the School of Architecture at UT. And so this made him the first African-American to enroll in the university, to enroll in graduate school at the university. He graduated in 1952 with his master's degree in architecture, writing his master's thesis on progressive architecture for the African-American church, for the Black church. And that thesis really would be influential to his later career, to the beginnings of his career as a professional architect. But that's a little bit further down the road, because of course, John Chase maintained his relationship in Austin with the community leaders, with Drusy's family members, church members, and so on and so forth here in Austin. And that really enabled him to establish a foundation for his career in architecture. Before his enrollment at the university, 1948, 1949, I haven't found a definitive date, but John Chase was working for the Lot Lumber Company or Lot Construction Company, and he continued to do so while he was enrolled at the university. This was a family-run African-American business that had been founded by Oral Rochester Lott and J.E. Mosby in 1914. Eventually, in about the 1930s, we have Lott buying out Mosby and really expanding on this from a lumber company to real estate development, and really was important and responsible for home building, erecting commercial and civic and religious institutions in East Austin for African Americans, really the establishment of entire neighborhoods for the African American community in Jim Crow Austin. They also established and designed communities and built houses in Bastrop and Williamson counties, and John Chase was a part of all that. And here in this spread, you can see some of the work of the construction company, members of the Lott family and other employees, along with here in the bottom left, a photograph of John Chase when he was working there at the same time that he was enrolled at the university. And one project that I really recently learned about that he was involved with was the Keystone Addition. And so this was on property that the Lotts had purchased as the Keystone Corporation. And from 1950 to 1951, they designed houses in the Keystone Addition on Graham Street. This collection of houses is still, which is amazing. So this is located just south of East 12th Street, between west of Hargrave along Walnut Avenue there. And even though this area was part of the larger Glen Oaks project that the Keystone Addition was able to escape urban removal that was rampant in parts of East Austin in the late 1960s and early 1970s. And so here we have that plat map and examples of some of the single family homes that made home ownership possible for African Americans in East Austin. And John Chase, via his employment with the Lott Construction Company, was a part of all of that. He maintained a relationship with Mr. Reed and continued to work on additions to the Deluxe Hotel. Just shortly after his graduation, he contributed to the addition there were 19 rooms that were added, hotel rooms. They created pretty much an bill that you can see here in the building. And this detail from a Sanborn map shows some of the earlier portions of the building in the yellow, the single family home that was probably late 19th century, early 20th century, that then got surrounded by all of these additions that Chase designed and supervised the construction of. And so we can see the finished product there of what that building looked like. And then a refresher of really the contributions and the continued contributions that Chase had, and that really spoke to the kinds of connections that he had in Austin, and of course that he maintained here after his graduation from the university in 1952. Of course, John and Drusy moved to Houston, where he taught at Texas Southern University and began to establish his career as a professional architect. But he did come home to Austin, and one of the first projects that he was involved with when he came back was for the Teacher State Association of Texas building in 1952, which is the main subject of our program this evening. And so we can see really these modern influences, the influence of the international style of the machine age, with the flat roof that's asymmetrical in some places, the metal casement windows, the bit of the canopy over the front entry, and these wonderful, almost porthole or ship-like windows that we see here at the front facade. And in these photographs that a student in my summer class took just over a couple of weeks ago of the building in progress, we can really see some of the details of these various modern characteristics that John Chase was imbuing in buildings that he was constructing, and really bringing that modern vibe, that modern flavor to clients, consumers who were pursuing this kind of look, to really modernize parts of East Austin, parts of Black Austin during this time period. After this project, and I'm just gonna run through an overview of John's work in Austin for the rest of these presentations so that we can talk specifically about the Teacher State Association of Texas building and have time for questions. But one of the next projects that he did was the King Tears Mortuary in 1955. And here we can see the previous building that John Chase rehabilitated. And you can see, again, some of these expressions of modernism that were incorporated into the rehabilitation of the building. Of course, he expanded the space to allow for the growth of the mortuary. The family had become, the Tears family, very prominent in Austin, and they had been for many years in the funeral home business. And John was able to really help to expand that physically, in a physical sense, and expand their appearance, their breadth, their reach in the community in this way, in his rehabilitations, renovations, and additions to the building there on East 12th Street. and we'll revisit this building in just a second. Of course, everyone is familiar with the wonderful David Chapel Missionary Baptist Church, and this is a kind of modern architecture for African American religious congregations that John Chase had proposed in his master's thesis from the University of Texas. So keeping in mind the needs of African American churches, particularly those with Baptist congregations in the United States at this time period, but also being able to expand on that and to have a modern expression for those congregations and the spirituality in those buildings. And so this was really a win-win situation because he was able to provide this service, provide modern architecture for Black churches, not only in Austin, but in Houston, in the Golden Triangle, so Houston, Beaumont, Port Arthur, and throughout Texas. In the early part of his career, the mid to late 1950s, when he was really establishing himself. And what he would do was take his thesis to congregations. He would meet with the pastors maybe on a Friday, talk about the architecture and visit, and then go to services on Sunday. And of course, if you know anything about Black church, you have to stand up when the visitors are announced. And so that's how he and Miss Drucy met people, how they gained clientele, particularly at that time when he was trying to establish himself, when no white firms would hire him. And so he basically had to hire and work for himself until he was able to pass, take the exams and become a registered licensed architect in the state of Texas. And he was the first African American to do so. But even as he was establishing his career in Austin, he maintained ties because of the community relationships that he had developed. Of course, Ms. Drucy's family was still here, and so they often came back. And so here we have Olivet Baptist Church, another very important religious congregation that he basically worked with the means and needs of the church to expand on and basically follow the print of a previous building. And you can see that earlier building here that served as the core, that form served as the core for the expansion, but he was able to, again, imbue that building with modern features and modern characteristics and bring it forward. And we're familiar with the Thompson House that he designed for the widow of a University of Texas classmate, Oscar Thompson, and that very important home becoming a fixture in East Austin, and of course, being one of the hallmark residences of the Rogers Washington Holy Cross neighborhood, expressing characteristics of modern Usonian architecture, really thinking about the use of the various materials, but also the use of modern materials and things like stone that are really grounding this architecture and making it a part of its environment, were all parts of his characteristics, characteristic of John Chase's work, especially in his admiration of other modern architects like Frank Lloyd Wright, for example. But we see John Chase putting his own spin on these works and really speaking to the needs and desires of his clients, and particularly the African-American clientele with which he worked here in Austin, in Houston, and other places as well in this part of his career. Here we have the Della Phillips House just across the street from Day Chapel and next door to the Irene Thompson House with its wonderful folding plate roof. Also thinking about characteristics of Usonian design, these wonderful stone and the diversity, the variety of material and texture, even as we have this horizontal expression. And if you were present at the tour that Preservation Austin did, the tour of homes this year, being able to see the wonderful interiors of this home that really spoke to, or John Chase was really speaking to, again, the needs of Miss Phillips and what she needed as a really a very important community leader and entertainer here in East Austin in the Black community. You'll recall I said we revisit the King Tears Mortuary, and here we have the renovation that John Chase did in 1970. So we have about 15 years hiatus before John Chase returned to Austin and did work. But here we have another expansion where there was a creation of two interlocking L-shaped volumes. Again, the various roof heights, the expressions of horizontality, but then mitigating that with vertical lines, sort of mitigating those clean horizontal lines of modern architecture with the deep overhangs, with the repeating vertical lines and the piers on the front facades and the tall vertical windows, but also this extensive use of brick And so a very different kind of modernism that's very warm as opposed to some of the international style modernism that we might think about with the white, very stark buildings that made John Chase really a very important regional modernist in Texas as far as the concern for material and the combination of these kinds of things. And then just rounding off his career, his architectural career here in Austin, but really speaking to the relationship that he retained not only with the city, with University of Texas, in the mid-1980s, John Chase established the John S. Chase Endowed Presidential Scholarship in the School of Architecture. He received the Distinguished Black Alumnus Award from the university and was also in 1998 the first African-American president of the Texas Exes. And in that role was the founder of the Black Alumni Advisory Committee. And so at this time period, of course, by this time period, he'd become a number of very prominent African-American architects, but running a Black-owned architectural firm around the country. And then later in his career, his work was specifically two projects for the University of Texas. On the left here, the San Antonio Garage, and then on the right, he collaborated with others on the construction of the Mike Myers Track and Soccer Stadium. And so John Chase's body of work in Austin is really very rich. It's only about a handful of buildings, 8 buildings here in Austin, but really important for the beginnings here, what he's trying to do in architecture to establish himself as a prominent modernist in Texas, in the United States, which ultimately he becomes, and of course gains international acclaim in the field of architecture. And of course, it all started here in Austin. And so without further ado, I would like to pass the mic to Stephanie Lee, who will talk to us a little bit more about the Teacher State Association of Texas building. Thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions later.
Thank you, Dr. Dudley, for passing the mic. And also, it's just always a pleasure to be in conversation with you and to have opportunities to learn more about your work and research. So always a good thing. So I also want to thank Preservation Austin, Lindsay Darrington, who has really become my preservation buddy, and as well, Megan King, for organizing this event. That is no small task. So I'm really happy to be here. And also, just good evening to everyone. So again, Stephanie Lang, and I lead the community-facing work for the Center for Community Engagement at the University of Texas. And you'll hear more about that a little later. However, one of the roles, a lot of the work that we do with community partners is around cultural and historic preservation. So by holding and sharing the stories most at risk of erasure and historically left out of the archives. So this works really well into what we're going to talk about today. So some of this work is obviously connected. So this evening, I will share a brief introduction to the history of the organizations housed in the building over the years. This is but a small part of the ongoing research and storytelling being done by the ECA team in collaboration with university and community partners. So before I go any further though, I would love to give special thanks to the amazing ECA team that helps make all this work possible. Jeremy Horn, Ashlyn Gray, who I think is on the line on the call, Nicole Jackson, Kristen Silva, and Eric Q, who worked on several projects in the last year dedicated to the Chase building and surrounding communities. All righty, next slide, please. Okay, so this is just the timeline for you all to look at as we get started thinking about, so 1952, the Colored Teachers State Association of Texas, and you see we have colored in parentheses. Those of you who are familiar with this history, there are kind of different names that the building has been referred to, the organization, association at times. So I hope to address that a bit in my presentation. 1967, House of Elegance, and then 2021, UT Center for Community Engagement. And one of the things that I found interesting in preparing for this presentation is that all of the organizations that had lives, right, that lived, that worked through this space, in this space, all were established somewhere else and then came into this space. So I find that really interesting and telling in a lot of ways. And the Center for Community Engagement, we're no exception to that rule. All righty, so let's see, next slide. Thank you. Okay, so in this picture, it's of the groundbreaking ceremony, the association building, and the signing of the deed. So there were, education officials, obviously officials of the association, religious leaders, community leaders, and association members, including, if you can see, I don't know if you can read any of this, but T.C. Calhoun, who was the second principal of Keeling Middle School, and Friendly Rudolph Rice, who was a longtime principal of Blackshear Elementary. All right, give you all a minute to look at that. I just have to say, I love that picture. Okay. Thank you, Megan. Okay, we're ready. All right. So these 3 plaques, I want to just give an opportunity for you to see some of the national and the state registry, and in the middle, this plaque that is actually embedded in the building and the entryway. So as you walk in, you'll see that. So I believe in calling folks' names, right? So you can see all of the people who were, active in the association, who the official leaders were, as well as the building committee. On the left is the Texas State Association of Texas Building. It talks about the National Registry. One thing that I thought was interesting, it says 1950 it was built. Our understanding that it's 1952, but nevertheless, a really important piece of this history is this plaque. And then on the right, we all know the historic marker that also speaks to that history, and it says Colored Teachers Association. Okay, so a little bit about the Colored Teachers Association. So it was founded in 1884 by 13 Black educators who met at Prairie View Normal School, now Prairie View A&M University. Among them was Elsie Anderson. I know if you've been in Austin for a hot minute, you know who Elsie Anderson, or know of this name. The original Anderson High School bears his name. He was one of the presidents of Prairie View Normal Institute as well. Ian Terrell, who was a noted educator in Fort Worth. David Abner, who was a politician and really advocated for education and helped build numerous schools in Texas. So they were among the original founders of the association. And the members were comprised of educators and politicians across Texas, which I think is really important to note. So Anderson, the principal of Prairie View Normal College, served as the association's first president and held the office for 4 terms, so from 1885 to 1889. The other 12 founders served in the presidency as well. So everyone had the opportunity to serve from 1889 to 1901. Funding for the association was mainly from membership dues. So, and all the work that they did, including the services of the presidency, was all voluntary. All meetings were held in members' homes until 1952, when they purchased the land and began construction of the building soon after. So the association's goals and accomplishments. They work to achieve quality education for Black Americans and fair working conditions for Black teachers, brought Black teachers and politicians together, fought for continued state support for Prairie View Normal College, they, endure this continual fight, right, for adequate state legislative support for the college, for a view normal, and the campaign for a Black university, which was included in the 1876 Texas Constitution. They also established the Commission on Democracy in Education, which was called CODE, and took legal action to equalize Texas teachers' salaries, Black Texas teachers' salaries. Through this, they achieved equal salaries for teachers in Dallas in February 1943, and the same for Houston teachers in April 1943. They also obtained equal pay for Black teachers in Galveston, Longview, Waco, Wichita Falls, Salina, and Hillsborough. They established a relationship with the Texas State Teachers Association before disintegration, and as well supported Heman Sweat during his suit against the University of Texas through legal aid and funding drives. So after desegregation, the association fought to maintain the rights of Black teachers and offered counsel and occasional financial assistance to displaced teachers, which I think is huge and would love to say this again. They provided counsel and occasional financial assistance to displaced teachers, as many Black teachers were fired or demoted during this period. They also kind of achieved another major milestone, and that was guaranteed equal pay for teachers in 1961, with a new state regulation set a minimum starting salary for teachers. All right, so next, this picture that's up now, these photos are of the Texas Standard. You'll see one with the headquarters building. There's one from one of the conventions, and then you'll see the one on the right. So this, the Texas Standard was first published in 1922. Their motto was the best in education for every Negro child, the best in working conditions for every Negro teacher. So on June 21st, 1955, the name officially changed to the Teachers State Association of Texas. So again, that's why you kind of see two different names often when referencing the association. So the Teachers State Association of Texas voluntarily dissolved on December 30th, 1966, due to segregation and the removal of racial barriers to membership in the Texas State Teachers Association. As guided by the Texas Nonprofit Corporation Act, the association's assets were transferred to the Commission on Democracy and Education. The commission maintained the remaining functions of the TSAT and ensured the protection and rights of the association's former members as they transitioned to the Texas State Teachers Association. So that is kind of all for now that we're going to talk about with the association, but I will say that we are working to kind of deeper dive into this work, into this amazing history. So we hope that you will keep an eye out for more things to come around this. All right, next slide, please. Okay, House of Elegance, complete beauty service. So before I share some of the history of House of Elegance, it's important, I think, to put in context the role beauty shops played, especially during this time period and earlier. So Dr. Tiffany Gill wrote in her 2010 book entitled Beauty Shop Politics, the salon was a conflation of home and work that served as a gendered space of pampering and femininity, while it's also the site of grueling physical labor, calculated entrepreneurial pursuits, and savvy political and social activism. Black beauty culturists worked within the space of the salon to promote opportunities for Black women strengthen their communities, and advocate for civil rights. And the House of Elegance was a true contributor to that legacy. Okay, next slide, please. So Dr. Ian Pease and the House of Elegance. Dr. Pease was trained by Mrs. also known as Madam Larissa Violet Christian, who Dr. Dudley spoke about, well-known leader and entrepreneur in East Austin. And a few things to share around that, as was mentioned, John Chase taught at the Crescent Institute, and Madam Christian was a student of Madam C.J. Walker, so entrepreneur, philanthropist, and political and social activist, as well as the first self-made woman millionaire. So just thinking about, right, that legacy. Dr. Pease originally had a salon for many years with her sister, Berlin Govan, in East Austin that was closed due to urban renewal. In 1967, she purchased the building from the Teachers Association. Okay, next slide, please. So here you see an ad. Her work, basically, she was very innovative, cutting edge in her techniques, was kind of ahead of the game in many ways, especially around hair weaving. It was something that she focused on for clients who were suffering from balding and thinning hair. So yes, this newspaper ad talks about that. One of the things that I wanted to highlight was the sense of community. In all of our research and conversations with Dr. Cox and others was the sense of community. And one of the ways that they met the needs of the community was around getting up early for the teachers and dignitaries who were clients. They would open the shop early for them before they went to school or before they taught or went to work, which was a really valuable resource and amenity. And so I wanted to share that, as well as one of the clients was Barbara Jordan was a client, Donna Carter, the architect, was a client, and your own Stephanie Lang at one point had the press and curl special, was a client as well. So Dr. Cox, Pearl Cox, so you'll see in the first picture with Mrs. Pease, and in this picture, daughter and final owner of the House of Elegance. So Dr. Cox was she started off as focusing on nail and skin cosmetology focused, later got her hair cosmetology license, was the first Black nail tech in East Austin, and kept the name House of Elegance for her current in-home salon. Dr. Pease and Dr. Cox both held leadership roles at the Texas State Cosmetology Association, which was the only Black cosmetology association. Okay, so, and then this slide, again, wanting to highlight, this is from a wonderful clip from East Side Stories, which I really recommend you all check out. It's very easy to find it. You can just Google it through YouTube. And it really, again, thank you for pointing that out. It really, again, talks about, there are clients who said that they drive from other cities, drive hours to come, right? And, you know, just thinking about the services, it's more than just getting your hair done, what this is bringing into people's lives, the friendships, the relationships that have been built through that. So that was, really says a lot about them. This power of being pampered, Dr. Cox spoke about quite a bit when we spoke with her, and also in this documentary, and thinking about that, right? Especially for Black women at a time, and arguably still, some would say, where the world would often not see them, right? This ways in which not only see them, but like their humanity, right? So this idea of helping someone to kind of rebuild who they are after, you know, all the things that they deal with daily and just the existence, right? So that's really, that was one of the things that really stuck with me and the impact that it had on the community. Next slide, please. All right, so another one of the contributions that they made to the community was the Miss East Austin Beauty Pageant. And you'll see in these photos, this pageant took place in the 60s, and this was at Givens Park. So Dr. P started the pageant. The salon sponsored scholarships along with other businesses and dignitaries. They styled the contestants' hair, they coached them. Students from UT and young women that grew up in the community competed in the pageant. So Miss East Austin pageant was at the community level, and then, you know, whoever was the winner from that moved on to Miss Black Austin, then Miss Black Texas, and then Miss Black Galaxy. Dr. Pease would help them, and staff would help them advance to each level, travel with the young ladies, train them, and then hired people in the community to help, such as East Austin leaders, Bertha Means, Jimmy Snell. They had military escorts that, you know, escorted the young women around. There was a noted choreographer, Mary Lindsay, Dr. Beulah Agnes Curry Jones, who is a noted music educator, played the music for all of the pageants. So yes, it was really something that is somebody that was kind of coming in at the end of that, that was really the, you know, the place to be, right? And it really it reminded people of having pride and being proud that you are from East Austin. All righty, next slide, please. So in spring 2021, two of the students, two of our ECA students, who I'd mentioned earlier, Jeremy Horn and Nicole Jackson, interviewed Dr. Cox. And it was a wonderful interview. A lot of this research, a lot of what we were talking about came from her oral history interview. And just want to thank her for being so gracious and always there to answer any questions we have. And the last thing I'd like to share about House of Elegance was that Nancy Brown, who's a teacher and a client, encouraged Dr. Cox to add the state and national historical marker about the Texas Colored Teachers Association. So again, I think that speaks to the power of the community, the importance that this building and all of its lives that it had was and meant to folks, and still does. So great. And now we're going to keep moving. Okay, thank you. So just quickly, these are some of the preservation and storytelling projects in and around the Chase building. We have several things that we're working on in addition, but this is just specific to the Chase building. The Oral History Project, we interviewed individuals who grew up or attended school or lived in and around Robertson Hill. The Robertson Hill virtual tour, which is in collaboration with Six Square Historic District and Visit Austin, and the Moody College of Communications Honors Program. The students actually are doing all the editing, have done all the filming, sound, as well. It's really important that we are kind of doing this multi-generational engagement with this history. The Chase Building Archive, and that's in collaboration with the Black Diaspora Archive at Lelas Benson, Latin American Studies and Collection. Rachel Winston, who I know is on the Zoom call, is the archivist who we're working with. And so a lot more to come with that as well. And then research and interviews just around, you know, the building and the neighborhood. All right, next slide, please. So this is Ms. Vonnie Rice Gardner. Many folks in the preservation circles know of her. She was one of our interviews and is a wealth of knowledge. And just, I can't say how grateful I am to all of the people that have participated in the oral history interview. And one thing around kind of how we're all connected. So Ms. Rice Gardner, her father was Friendly Rice, who, like I mentioned earlier, you saw him in one of the pictures, who was a longtime principal of Blackshear. So everybody in East Austin in some way is connected. All right, next slide, please. And this is a still from the upcoming Robertson Hill virtual tour, again in collaboration with Six Square, Visit Austin, and Moody College of Communications Honors Program. This is always dapper Mr. Harrison Epwright, who I saw pop on the call, and want to thank him for all the work he's done. He's really a mentor of mine around this history. He's standing outside of Pocket Park, which was many things. It was the Olive Street Elementary School, and before that, it was the original site of Anderson High School. So the tours that, the sites rather, that we are going to showcase is Olive Street Elementary School, Wesley United Methodist Church, Olivet Baptist Church, and then of course, you know, the areas that I mentioned as part of the Chase building. So the association, the House of Elegance, and as well, the Center for Community Engagement. All right, next slide, please. So if you would love to contact us, if you want to contact us, we would love to hear from you. Here's our email, website. Again, we're doing quite a bit kind of around the launch of the new building, or renovated building rather. So you will definitely hear more from us, but feel free to reach out if you have any questions or want to learn more about all of our projects. All right, and then the next slide is just me saying, thank you. And now I get the honor of passing it along to Dr. Gururaj.
Thank you, Ms. Lang, and thank you, Dr. Dudley. And Megan, I think you want to give us some instruction.
Yes, hi. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Dr. Gururaj. We're running a bit over time, but I just want to encourage you all to stick around. Dr. Gururaj's brief presentation, and then we'll have the virtual tour of the building. So just wanted to give you a little scheduling update there. So I'll let you proceed. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Megan. I do want to thank Preservation Austin for having us. I want to thank Dr. Dudley and Ms. Lang. I want to thank my other directors within the Center for Community Engagement, including Ms. Amory Krueger, Ms. Emma Middleton, for all this work. And trust me, you will want to stick around for the video that follows my brief presentation today. I will be brief so that I don't stand in the way too much. But what I did want to start out by saying is that it's been such a pleasure and a privilege to understand the various lives of this building as we head into giving it new life. And so as such, you know, we are community engagement professionals. I am Assistant Vice President for Community Engagement in the Division of Diversity and Community Engagement. And as such, we believe in embodying this true spirit of community engagement. We hope that after this conversation, you'll reach out to us and tell us what you think the next life of this building ought to be as well. Next slide, Megan. So I will very briefly go over some of what got us here, because I do think it's nothing short of a miracle that we are moving into the John S. Chase building at 1191 Navasota. I will start by giving thanks to President Bill Powers, who in 2007 created, through a strategic initiative, the Division of Diversity and Community Engagement to have programs, about 50 of them, live at the intersection of diversity and community engagement. with the understanding that community engagement helps people understand diversity, and that diversity and learning about diversity and diverse populations, as we are here, leads us to engage more competently and kindly and empathetically in the community. And so we are the division that supports the mission of the university. And so you'll see those words, maybe it's hard to see, in italic. We support public service. We support public programs. We support the citizens through public programs and provide public service. And this is our job. Thank you, sir. Next slide. And the Center for Community Engagement within the Division of Diversity and Community Engagement, we have this mission statement, but very simply what we do is we connect the university with the communities that are not at the university. So we foster mutually beneficial community-university collaborations. We connect the resources of the university with our communities. And at the end there, I put a statement that we truly believe, and we have since we sort of started talking about this in about 2011, we are the front porch of the university. And what that means is that we act as that first place that you step onto when you are going into somebody's home, right? We know that our university has been historically unwelcoming. We know that it is a behemoth in this city. We know it is hard to get to. It is hard to park on our campus. And so what we seek to do is to invite folks in to conversation with us and with the people of our university. Next slide, please. And so traditionally what we've done is we have focused on these areas, and I bring these up. Stephanie Lang was talking about the various programs within our portfolio, and I'll concentrate on the area that she's leading now, which is equity and community advocacy. We have always focused on these issues of equity and community advocacy in these 5 general areas: economic empowerment, health equity, educational equity, housing and affordability, and engagement around land use. We have done that work. Primarily, we started out as a community relations unit, doing that work by incubating nonprofits, by some of which you've heard of, Six Square, Foodways Texas. We have served on boards. We have attended community meetings. We have provided the services of the Texas Grants Resource Center, which is a grantsmanship organization that supports the needs of nonprofits and individuals seeking grants. And we do this all as a service to the community. Over time, though, we started out sort of attempting to repair our relationships between the university and the communities around us. We slowly took on the mantle of being a robust community engagement unit. And we did that by, Megan, it's the next slide. Oh, you may not be able to read this at all, and that's fine. We'll share all the slides with you. But we did this by creating synergy among the different programs that we run through our community, our Center for Community Engagement. We have student programs that help students, like I said, interface with the community, get off of the 40 acres. Those are led by Ms. Krueger. One of the most notable memories I have about our student engagement programs is the alternative breaks program that Amory led, that took our students into East Austin to conduct these initial oral histories with our elders and our leaders in East Austin. The Texas Grants Resource Center I mentioned, community advocacy, equity, those are Ms. Lang's portfolio. And what we were able to do, instead of just saying we're the front porch of the university, in 2017, we made that official. We created a series of programs called our front porch gatherings, which many of you have probably attended. They are community convenings designed to gather stakeholders around catalyzing change around very complex issues in Austin. And we're never afraid to tackle issues like gentrification or food deserts or healthcare, mental health inequity. And finally, our community-based learning. This is our program that enables us to connect our faculty with the communities beyond the university. And so we encourage our faculty to teach through engagement, to get their students out serving in the community, to better understand what they're learning in the classroom. We encourage our faculty to engage in engaged scholarship as well. And we are acting as the front porch of our university. We've been doing this for quite a while now. So as you can imagine, we were leading our community-facing programs out of, some of you know, the Griffin Building in front of Ebenezer Church on 11th Street for a very long time. And we so appreciate their partnership. In 2015, we started looking to see if we could establish a place of our own in the community that was part of the university. And so we thought that we might build, but it was 2015 and that was completely unrealistic. And so we held on. And so what happened was nothing short, like I said, of a miracle. In 2017, we learned that this building on Navasota was purchased by the university. And as folks who believe ourselves to be stewards to the community, we were sort of interested, anxious, eager to learn who would be in that building. Until I was asked, among other folks, I was asked to submit a proposal for the building. And I remember the proposal waxing very poetically. At some point, I was very moved to write a proposal about how this would be truly the intersection of community engagement and diversity, to inhabit and to work in the space that was designed by the first Black graduate of the School of Architecture, the first licensed Black architect in the state of Texas, as our community-facing community engagement center would be a dream. It was only topped by the fact that we worked with this incredible project management and construction team at UT, led by Dorothy Fochik and Nathan Goodman. I think Nathan's on the call. And that we got to work with Donna Carter, who is a legend, of course, in revitalization, historic preservation, but also, poetically enough, the first licensed Black female architect in the state of Texas, which we thought was just, it was all signs were leading to the fact that we were going to inhabit this building. So that's next slide, Megan. And so this happened. And so we were thrown into a new era and envisioning a new life for this building. So we can go to the next slide, Megan. So here is, and I hope that Nathan doesn't mind that I'm sharing this floor plan. This is the building, all 1,400 or so square feet of it. And the vision for it is so expansive. There's a classroom in the lower left-hand corner. That is where we are going to hold service learning classes and community classrooms for our equity and community advocacy portfolio. We're going to use that room as our storytelling booth and record oral histories of our elders and our leaders. That business center will hold networking sessions for our Texas Grants Resource Center so that our nonprofits can align and apply for funding for grants for capacity. That break room, we see that as no less than a community kitchen, because we know that all good community engagement happens over food, breaking bread. In that startup suite in the back, that's our community collaborative space. That's our staff workspace on the right. And that's where we're going to invite our 400 plus partners, not all at the same time because they will never fit, to work with us to come up with innovative thinking around how to best collaborate in our communities. And throughout our furniture, our design helped, thank you, Jennifer Cartledge, is designed to be modular. So it's changeable. It is flexible, like everything that we do in the community. So next slide. So Amory Krueger had the excellent idea of creating a photo journal of the process of renovation in this building. So I'm just going to share a few photos. It's just been very inspirational to be able to watch this process. But I put these in as sort of before photos, not to say that there's a before or after, but these are some of the beloved lives of this building. And we wanted to capture that these are some of the lives that this building has led, and that they are all incredibly important still in our perception of what this building could be. And so as we seek to move forward with this work, we seek to also engage with archivists, with historians, with the School of Architecture, our friends and partners over there, to ensure that we are constantly bringing the previous lives of this building to the fore as well. Next slide. I am including too, we talked at length about how to support and elevate the vision of this building as one of John Chase's first buildings, and one of the, a true treasure in our community. And so we talked at length about that planter in the middle of that building. And it is such a typical John Chase piece that we are really excited to be able to keep that, to preserve it, and to elevate its visibility. Next slide. I want to give Donna Carter such praise for taking such time and love with every detail. I'm looking at those windows that we worked on to ensure that the renovation was done in a way that truly reflected the design, but of course brought the building to its modern form and its contemporary form so that we can use it now. I am also reminded in looking at this and in those discussions that every single one of us, from PMCS to our team, talked at length about how this was probably the most fun we've ever had on a project, because it was incredibly out of the ordinary, but it was also absolutely a labor of love. Next slide. And in our choices for furniture, this is very, very recent, these shots. And in our choices for furniture and for design and color, I give all credit to the PMCS team and to their wonderful eye and their focus on integrity in the building. We tried very hard to be true to the style of John Chase and to that mid-century modern aesthetic. Next slide. I may be the most excited about this view of the building because truly, after about almost 15 years at this division of diversity and community engagement, and maybe 10 years of this idea that we are the front porch of this university, this is our front porch. Right, this is, it's in the back of the building to be sure, but it is our front porch. This will be the site of convenings, the site of celebrations, and hopefully the site of a plaza where all of our neighbors and friends can come join us in this work. And the next slide. And Dr. Dudley shared this view, but it is, this is our Center for Community Engagement in the community, and it is open to all, and we welcome you all. And then the last slide is just a request for you all, please, to stay connected with us. Again, in the spirit of engagement, we do this work, we have done this work. in very close collaboration with all of our partners. We have been talking since day one with our friends and neighbors, truly our neighbors in the Robertson Hill neighborhood and Blackshear. We have been attempting through COVID, through a snowstorm, to keep folks posted on the progress of this building, because we believe in the promise of this building as much as hopefully you all do. And I encourage you to come seek us out, shoot us an email, let us know your vision, and please begin to see yourself in this building, which is UT's front porch. And I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Gururaj. I'm going to get the video up right now. And I will share my screen with you all so we can get going with that.
Hi, my name is Amory Krueger, and I am on staff at the Center for Community Engagement, part of the Division of Diversity and Community Engagement at the University of Texas at Austin, and part of the team who will be the future residents of the John Chase building. So for the outside of the building, it was a pretty dramatic transformation, mostly in sort of refurbishing the original exterior and the paint colors to try to modernize and sort of update at the same time. So the front door of the building is what we're the most excited about. I think it's the biggest statement on the front of the building. It's the original front door. It was completely sanded, refinished, and repainted specifically to make a statement on the front of the building. But the other most dramatic kind of area and feature on the front of the building is the corrugated metal front that was completely redone for the renovation, and then the sort of eyebrow feature, as we're affectionately calling it. That piece really stands out and is a defining feature of the mid-century vibe of the front of the building. We've completely redone the landscaping and tried to minimize it as much as possible. UT Landscape Services did all the work and is going to maintain that, but they're really trying to highlight the architecture of the building to try to keep it low, try to keep it minimal, low maintenance, and to really show off the design features that are on the front porch, the front door, and then also show off and allow light through the main windows. And the windows were also specially ordered, specially installed to match the original windows. They were remanufactured and reinstalled to look just like the original windows. So now we're standing in one of the back corners of the building, and this is going to function as the kitchen and break room for the building. It previously functioned as a break room and a storage space, but it's going to function, it's all clean and crisp, and that's really the kind of the vibe of the inside of the building. So coming through the hallway, we've got the restroom right here on the right, and then we have the coffee room over here. This is kind of like our, utility space. We hope to have as many of the walls as possible used for displays of memorabilia and archives and mementos of the former lives of the building as possible. And then when we come in here, we've got a conference room space. So you'll see we've got carpet on this floor. We tried to maximize the windows as much as possible. And then built-ins, also for memorabilia, for storage function. But this will serve as our conference room and meeting space that will be available, for any UT staff and faculty that want to have meetings here, community organizations, in small groups that want to have meetings here, we hope it will be an open and multi-use space as possible. Welcome to the front lobby of the building. This is going to serve as the main entrance, the welcome, the front desk area, and also you'll see the big blank walls, much more display space for anything that we want to put in here and showcase. So as you can see, the back side of the front door it is a dramatic feature for the inside as well, and the big windows really let so much light in and I think kind of define the feel of the space and really allow for it to be as bright and open and welcoming as possible. A couple more defining features of this space, particularly in here, one being this interior planter that we were able to keep. It matches the flagstone of that exterior of the building and will just serve as a planter for us, but it really sort of that mid-century idea of bringing the inside outside, or bringing the outside inside. And we're really glad to be able to get to keep it. And then the other thing is this light tray along the ceiling that eventually will be stained, dark wood to match the interior doors and trim. But it really also showcases all the light in the room and is just like an extra wonderful architectural feature to define the space. So this first room down the hallway will function as the home for our Texas Grants Resource Center. That particular office and center will serve as a clearinghouse and a resource center for any individuals or small groups looking for funding. The idea in these rooms is that everything will be modular, all the furniture will be movable, and we're able to tailor it to the usage, both current and future of the space. And this is the final room of the building. This will be the staff suite. It's again a pretty open and plain space right now, and it'll be furnished with modular furniture and movable. Everything will be movable and able to function in whatever way we need it for. In the immediate future, it'll serve as our main staff space for the staff of the Center for Community Engagement who will be in here, so we can have meetings, just generally conduct business and have that sort of home base and place to work out of. So we are very excited to be wrapping up this renovation project and moving into this building soon-ish. Over the course of the rest of this year, we'll be doing a lot of virtual storytelling, digital storytelling about the lives of this building, about its former residents, people connected to the building and the neighborhood that the building sits in. And then we look forward to inviting people, hopefully in person, into the building in 2022 when we officially open it to the public and start our regular operations.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody, for sticking with us. And I'm sorry for the audio mishap at the beginning of the video. I will be sure to send, this will all go up on YouTube, so I'll be sure to send everybody a link of the recording. You can catch the first part of Amory's discussion at the beginning there. But if we have any burning questions before anybody leaves, just to add them in the chat. Otherwise, if not, we'll just wait a couple seconds and see if anybody has any questions. And again, thank you all for sticking with us, and thank you to our speakers tonight for such a lovely and thoughtful presentation. And I'd also like to thank, of course, our sponsor, Colin Corrigan, for making this event possible, and to our Preservation Austin members. And again, Dr. Gururaj, Stephanie, Dr. Dudley, thank you all very much. If there's no questions, I think we got some in the chat already. I will then say thank you again and good night. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.